situations if you have any other questions from today. I will also be leaving my email at the end of the presentation if you have any follow-up questions. So I'm going to get started on our PowerPoint, and then the floor will be open to any questions or comments. So again, thank you all for coming. We're going to start with just a short overview of the FSIG program. So the goal of the Food Security Infrastructure Grant Program is to ensure that individuals and families throughout the Commonwealth have access to food with a special focus on food that is produced locally and equitable access to food. The program seeks to ensure that farmers, fishermen, and other local producers are better connected to a strong, resilient food system to help mitigate future supply chain distribution disruption. So in the first round of the program, which was FY21, we received over 1,300 applications requesting over $200 million. We were able to award $35.5 million to 360 projects. In the second year of the program, FY22, was when we shifted away from this program just being a response to COVID and really focusing on increasing the resiliency and strengthening the food system as a whole over the long term. In this second round, we received 587 applications requesting $97.2 million, and we awarded $27.5 million to 147 organizations. Our awardees in both rounds were across various sectors, including distributors, suppliers, farmers, fisheries, food banks, food hubs, municipalities, nonprofits, for-profit schools, the list goes on and on. Some of the accomplishments from the first two rounds were the ability to make local fresh food production more efficient and accessible, which allowed more to be distributed in state. We lowered the cost, or you guys, I should say, lowered the cost of production, which in turn has made food more accessible to lower income communities and increased the ability of distributors to partner with things like SNAP and EBT and other organizations, which help lower costs. And this is a result of lower costs on your end of doing business and higher efficiency in production. So we've been working really hard to understand the needs of the Commonwealth's food system and all of its partners through an ongoing survey. This survey is still open and we encourage you all to participate. You can find it on the Food Security Infrastructure Grant Program mass.gov main website. Results of this feedback, as well as feedback from today and the other listening session, are what we've been using to create our upcoming RFR and application. So to date from this survey, the most common funding needs that we have found are construction updates, kitchen equipment, vehicles, technology upgrades, program expansion, including increasing staff to accommodate increase in food insecurity related to the pandemic. Some of the largest barriers that have been identified are lack of transportation, access to communities in need, old buildings and equipment, high prices. We've seen smaller organizations struggling to find partnerships to decrease costs and increase impact, and supply chain issues continuing to make the market more competitive. So what's next for the FSIG program? So the next round is going to be for FY24. So we are currently in fiscal year 2023. The application will be posted this year in mid-January, but the awards will be for next fiscal year. So just to give a rough timeline, the application will be open for about 6 weeks. After the application closes, our review team will commence, we'll review all the applications, do the recommendations for awards, and then contracting will begin in this fiscal year, but the contracts will be for next year. So you'll have from July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2024, which is an entire calendar year to complete your projects. And we're hoping that this expanded timeline will give people more time to mitigate some of the supply chain issues that unfortunately are continuing, and hopefully eliminate the need to do extensions. Each applicant will only be allowed to submit one application for a project up to $500,000. This is a reimbursement grant, so all awardees are required to pay for any costs up front, and then you'll be reimbursed by the Commonwealth at a later date after the approval of your expenses. So I'm not going to read through everything in detail, but if you have any questions on anything I've gone over, please feel free to ask, and I'm happy to go into more detail on any of these things. So eligible projects will allow applicants to strengthen and improve the resiliency of the food system while allowing greater access to fresh local food in a way that addresses systemic inequalities. Projects will support immediate and long-term needs of the Commonwealth's food system, including food storage, processing, delivery equipment, food safety equipment, vehicles for distribution, purchase of food processing, washing, and packing equipment, information technology needs, regional projects that address or study systemic causes and impacts of food insecurity throughout the Commonwealth, and projects that intend to increase the long-term resiliency to drought or other extreme weather events. Scoring is to be performed and reviewed by a grant committee led by EEA, which is the department that this grant comes out of, and it's including staff from other departments, including public health, agriculture, fish and game, Department of Transitional Assistance. Proposals must include a budget. Applicants must provide quotes from vendors or contractors with their applications, and each line item in the budget must have an associated quote with it. So some of the evaluation criteria we use, this is not a cumulative of everything, but some of the things we do look for are the potential impact of the project to the Commonwealth's food system, the ability to address demonstrated food insecurity challenge, ability to ensure equity, economic impact and need, the feasibility of the action plan, sustainability and scalability efforts, and collaboration. So what's new for this upcoming round? So based on the feedback from the first two rounds, we have expanded the eligibility to a broader range of projects. The first expansion has to do with the ongoing droughts throughout the Commonwealth. So something that we're focusing on are projects that assist farmers with the cost of water supply infrastructure needs to address current and future drought conditions. This includes technology upgrades such as drip irrigation for farms or greenhouses. Another activity related, as well as in other actions to provide a reliable water supply, including digging or expansion of new wells or surface water bodies, services to support well maintenance and rehabilitation with the necessary local and state regulatory approvals. Another new addition this year to the application are regional studies on factors that relate to greater food insecurity, including food deserts, communities of colors, gateway cities, low-income residents, environmental justice neighborhoods, and how to address these in each region. Research related to ongoing food security measures and their impact throughout the Commonwealth, studies analyzing the impact on food security and climate change on food security, analysis of the impacts of food insecurity on health. Again, this is not an expansive list. These are just some ideas of regional case studies, and this isn't necessarily an infrastructure project as in building something, but our hope is that with these regional studies looking at larger areas, we can find and identify those gaps in the infrastructure for food security and then be better informed when projects are occurring in the future. So I'm going to open it up for comments and questions. I will also be posting this PowerPoint on the main food security mass.gov page. So if you want to reference it, it should be up there next week. I will also leave my email in the chat before the webinar is over. So if you have any follow-up questions or anything you didn't think of during this time, feel free to send me an email. So I'm now going to open it up to any questions, comments, concerns, anything that's come to mind. That I see a few in the Q&A. So I'm going to start by addressing those. And then if anyone else has a question, please use the raise hand feature and I will answer. So somebody asked, can this grant be used for the purchase of food? No, this grant cannot be used for the purchase of food. It has to be an infrastructure related durable good. Somebody asked, will payments be dispersed as lump sum or multiple payments? So this depends on how you choose to submit your reimbursements. So for reimbursements, we require proof of payment as well as a paid invoice and a picture of the physical item that you're reimbursing for. So say you're getting two things, you're getting a tractor and then some implements for it. You have the option to either wait until you receive everything at once and then you can submit for reimbursement, or you can submit per item that you receive. So there's really no way that you have to do it other than the item must be in your possession before you can submit for reimbursement, but how you choose to couple those reimbursements is totally up to you. Another question asked, can this grant be used for deer fencing to protect food supplies? Yes. With all of these, you would just have to make the case of how the fencing will help you with your food security measures, which I know seems obvious, but just make sure like you really are articulating that we need this fencing for X, Y, and Z because the deers are coming in and destroying our food supplies. At this time, funding is not being used for overhead costs. It has to either be an infrastructure project or one of those regional case studies. So somebody asked, can you repeat when the app will be released? Absolutely. So that RFR, which is the request for response, which is where we announce the new application and details about it, along with the application, will be posted in mid-January. So that will be soon. The application will then be open for 6 weeks. So you have 6 weeks to fill out the application. It is not on a rolling basis, so we do not review applications until the application period is closed. So there's no pressure to get this done on the first day. After that 6-week period ends, it is then the review phase. So during the review phase is when that committee that I spoke about, comprised of different agencies, will go through each of the applications and we'll make our decisions. After that, it gets sent to review, and once they're approved is when we will announce awardees, and then you'll begin the contracting, with the contracts not to begin until July 1st. So the hope is that you will all have your executed contracts on or before July 1st, so you'll have a full calendar year to get your projects started. Somebody asked if this can be for a business just getting established. Absolutely. If you can demonstrate the need and show the work that you're doing, then yes. So somebody said, when will funding decisions be communicated? So it will be after the review period. So probably sometime in the spring, and then your contract will begin July 1st. We do not allow land to be purchased through this grant. Somebody asked, if we receive funding from the most recent round, are we eligible for applying again? Would that impact the likelihood of receiving it? So if you are a past recipient, there's nothing held against you if you apply again. The only stipulation is you can't apply for something that's already been funded. So say you received a tractor from us, you can't reapply for that same tractor. You could reapply for a continuation of that project if it was like an addition to the tractor or something to help with that same thing, but you just cannot apply for these same items you've already received. Other than that, nothing is held against you if you've applied in the past. Somebody asked, do all reimbursements requests need to be submitted before June 30th, 2024? It's a great question. So June 30th, 2024 is the date by which you have to receive all of your items and have paid for them. You then will have a month to submit all your final reimbursements, because say you get your last item on June 30th, it's not realistic to assume that you're going to be able to submit that reimbursement the exact day, but you have to show that you had paid for it before June 30th, 2024. Somebody asked if I can explain more about how the reimbursement works. Do all the items need to be accounted for in the application budget to be reimbursed? So for the application, what you do is you submit a line item budget. Each line in the budget will be specifically allocated to a particular part of your project. So if you're getting 4 things, you'll have the price for each of those 4 things and then your total budget at the bottom. When you're reimbursing, what you'll do is you submit a cover letter and you'll say, I'm submitting reimbursement, say, for $10,000 for this part of my project. We'll then on our side say, okay, this is for this part of the project, and then we'll make a note, $10,000 reimbursed, X amount remaining. then I'll submit that to finance, who will then reimburse you for that amount. Alternatively, as I mentioned, you could wait until you've received everything and then submit. So all of the items need to be accounted for in the application budget to reimburse. If something does come up in project and something isn't available or it's out of price range, there are a few options there. We can help you with troubleshooting, whether that be reallocating money within your budget, not ordering a specific item, or replacing that item. If it does come to the point where an item has to be replaced with something entirely new, we would need you to submit new quotes and a new budget. But for ideally, everything that you're going to reimburse will be in your application budget. So somebody asked, so we apply, get accepted or declined. If accepted, we will know how much we have to spend. We spend then submit per item or in total for reimbursement according to agreed upon award. Is this accurate? Yes. So when you're accepted, you will get your contracting documents, which will have the amount you were awarded, and we will also include a line item budget of each item you're awarded for and how much you're awarded for each item. You will then submit for reimbursement according to that. So somebody asked, for farms that have round 2 FSIG projects still under construction, somewhat delayed doing permitting supply chain projects, can a new unrelated infrastructure project still be applied for the round 3 application? Yes, you can still apply for a separate project even if you have an ongoing project. You just would not be able to apply for that ongoing project that you've already received funding for. But if it's not related to the new thing you're applying for, then that's fine. So we do inform all awardees of decisions whether or not they're awarded. If you're not awarded, it will usually come to you via email. And if you have questions related to that, you can always follow up, but you will be notified. We use the email on the application you submit. So make sure that that email is accurate, because that will be the communication whether you're awarded or not awarded. So somebody asked, how far back can an expense be occurred, i.e. expenses for last year's drought? Great question. So for this grant program, any expenses have to be within the executed date. So what the executed date is, after you get your contract from us, you decide this looks good, I want to move forward, you'll sign it and return to me. I will then compile all of your documents and send it to the state's finance department, who will then review it, make sure all of the documents you submitted verifying your identity and your bank account look correct. They'll sign it off and date it. The date that is on that signature from the state is what we call the effective date of your contract. So say you get it back on June 20th, but the contract technically doesn't begin until July 1st. You can go by that June 20th date and start buying things. So anything June 20th or beyond, you are fine to expense for. You cannot expense for anything before your executed date. So even if you are told, say in April, that you're getting the award, but you don't get that executed contract until June, anything you buy from April till June cannot be reimbursed. So it has to be in that period of your signed contract. Somebody asked, is it okay to submit a proposal for seemingly unrelated items? For example, wash area improvements, tractor implement, deer fencing. Yes, we have people all the time that submit for various things in one project. For the most part, there's not a problem with that, as long as you can make the case for everything you're applying for and how it's going to help you and your organization. The state does have the right, when we're reviewing applications, to do partial funding. So there's always a possibility that they might pick, say, maybe the wash area and the tractor, but not the deer fencing. But there's no problem for applying for multiple things, as long as it's under that $500,000 mark. So somebody asked, when would applicants be notified they're awarded? So the Applicants would be notified after all of the contracts are reviewed. I can't give an estimated time on it because it depends on how many contracts we get. The more we get, the longer it's going to take to review them all, but it will probably be sometime in the spring. That's when contracting will begin, and then the contract itself or your project will begin in July, on July 1st. Somebody asked the limit to the amount that can be applied for, and it's $500,000 and one project per person. Somebody asked, can any of the funding be used for staff training related to a specific capital purchase? So kind of, it can be used for staff training if you purchase something through the program that requires training. So say you purchase some type of heavy machinery and it's a safety risk to have untrained people using the machinery, then you could absolutely apply for staff training for something like that. We don't generally reimburse for just general staff training for your employees, but if it's specifically related to something for your project that requires training, then you absolutely can submit for that. When is the application submission deadline? So the application submission deadline will be 6 weeks after the application is posted. So if it's posted mid-January, the deadline will be March, if my math is correct. But the deadline will be very clear when it is posted. We will have the explicit date that it closes on, and the application will close online, so you won't be able to submit it. But it will by no means be a surprise when the application closes. Somebody asked, so if we find out we were approved for an award in April, we can't start spending the funds until July 1st. So you can't start spending the funds until you have your executed contract, which is signed by both you and the state and approved. If you happen to get that contract back before July 1st, you can begin starting the date on that application. But say you've just find out in April you got the award, you can't begin until you have that executed contract. And if you had purchased something before that date, you wouldn't be able to submit it for reimbursement. Somebody asked about covering increasing staff. So at this time, we don't cover increasing staff, but that has been something that was noted, as I mentioned in the PowerPoint, as a common barrier. So it's something that we have been in discussion to expanding our program to be able to accommodate, but at this time we do not. So somebody asked, if I purchase a piece of equipment that needs to be installed, can I charge for my time to complete the installation if I do it myself? So you can charge if you are paying someone to install it. So say it's something that requires a contractor or an electrician, you can apply for that because we require them through this grant to be registered in the state of Massachusetts. So because we require that, you can submit for that. However, we do not cover reimbursement for laborers or contractors who are not licensed in Massachusetts. So if you yourself are not licensed, we wouldn't be able to cover that. So somebody asked if the application budget is specifically for the project, or does the project need to be included in an overall operational budget? No, we just want the budget and the line items for your specific project. There will be other questions in the application that will talk about how much your organization either makes or produces or something similar to that, but we're not asking for a breakdown of all of your finances. We're really just focused on the budget for your specific project. So somebody asks, if we retail our food and offer SNAP or HIP options, is that a good demonstration? Absolutely. Something we look for are partnerships like SNAP, EBT, HIP, because it shows that you're already trying to lower the costs and make them more accessible. So there will be a part in the application that asks if you have SNAP, and if you do, the number that you have associated with your SNAP. So it's definitely something that we look for. So somebody commented that their project would help to increase the supply of locally grown food, but wouldn't be wouldn't be able to specifically demonstrate helping underserved communities. Do you recommend applying? So I would still apply. I would just focus your application on that locally grown food and how this project, the processing equipment, would make that food cheaper and would allow you to distribute more in state. So even if it's not necessarily an underserved community, because that's not the reality for where everyone operates, it's still important that we're creating a strong system where the food that we produce and we process stays in state and we can distribute it at a more affordable cost. So if this project in any way is helping you do that, even if it's not directly tied to an underserved community, I think it's still worth applying. So we do look for a proposal match. It's not a specific percent where you'll be approved or denied if you have a match, but we do like to see that there is a match involved with your project. Yes. Somebody asked about the limit for applying. So it's $500,000 max. There's no minimum. You can apply for a small project as you want, but $500K is the max you can apply for, and it's one application per person. Somebody asked, in the context of the staff training question, would it be permissible to include classes for heavy equipment licenses or similar, so long as these classes are separate from any license or application fees? Yes. So if you're receiving heavy equipment and that equipment requires training, which is obviously very important, we will cover the training for those. As you mentioned, we don't cover fees or any licenses, but we will cover training for heavy equipment, especially if it's equipment that is bought through the infrastructure program. Somebody asked, can we use funds to lease a storage facility? If so, would we need to have located a site and have signed a lease in hand? In lieu of a signed lease, could we submit multiple quotes? So we usually look for a signed lease. I am going to make a note and I will follow back up about having multiple quotes. But usually what we like to see is a signed lease because we want to see that this project is actually in motion and the funding that you're using is being used to help food security in the community. But I'm making a note of that, and any questions that require follow-up will be posted on our mass.gov food security page, as well as this recording to reference later. But I would say the case would be stronger if you had the land already leased. Receiving a previous grant will not affect your ability for this grant as long as it's for a different project. And it could be the extension of a same project, but I mean, it has to be for different items that you have not already been reimbursed for by the state. And this includes other grant application programs too. So somebody asked, does a screenshot of an online shopping cart count as a quote for a budget? Yes, so what we're looking for with a budget